Today, I am joined by Rassooli, an Iraqi exile, critic of Islam, and also the author of Lifting the Veil. IQ, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you very much.
Excellent, great. Well, thank you for joining me. I'm pretty excited, to be honest with you. I spent the last few days watching a lot of your content on YouTube. I've probably done about 9 or 10 hours, so I'm pretty informed when it comes to your stuff, and I've also learnt a lot. So thank you very much for all the time you put into your work.
To tell you the truth, now you don't need me.
Maybe not yet.
You
I think
spend,
I
if
need
you
you guys
spend
for.
9 hours, honestly, if you spend 9 hours, you don't need me anymore.
I don't know about that, so I definitely need people like yours advice to guide me along the right path. But before we get too deep into Islam, I'd like to ask you about your experiences growing up in Iraq, because I'm sure it's a far different country to what it is now.
Yeah, it was much better before, by the way.
Yeah.
When I grew up, the leader was Abdul Qasim. Abdul Qasim, he overthrew the monarchy. Unfortunately, he shouldn't have done, but he did. But he was a decent guy. He didn't have a penny in the bank. All the people who murdered him became multimillionaires. So, and he was secular. In fact, he was a leftist. He opened the door for the Communist Party to come into Iraq. But by that time, I had left Iraq to go to Europe to study. And I was very lucky, really very lucky. My family was secular. I mean, you won't believe it, but the only time children in my class and other classes ever got gifts was Christmas time. And they didn't make gifts when they were Muslims, Baha'is, Jews. No, Christmas time was when everybody got a gift. It wasn't celebrating Christmas itself, but it was the occasion. Anyway, when I came to Europe, of course, I had access to all the information that I needed, which I couldn't get in Iraq, about the Bible, about Christianity, about Judaism, about Buddhism and Hinduism. Cut a long story short, I spent a lot of time studying, comparing, contrasting, and then I realized that there's something catastrophically wrong with the Quran. And in a very short period of time, very short period of time, I realized I have to literally dedicate my life to educate people. And I did. And I've been doing it for the last over 30 years.
You certainly have. You've been doing a great job. But if we can just focus on Iraq for just a second, you know, your book title is called Lifting the Veil. How often did you see women walking around in the burqa, and how present was a more hardline authoritarian acceptance of Islam in Iraq during that time?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's not only just lifting the veil. You've got to put the full title. Lifting the Veil, the True Faces of Muhammad and Islam.
Okay.
It's not a hot potato. It's not Harry Potter. 3 volumes that I have, the trilogy, are, as you know, if you have read part of them, they're very heavy going. It's annotated with verses upon verses upon verses from the Quran and the Hadith. So they are good only for people who are willing to spend the time to learn about Islam, to study Islam, and then to convey information that they earned or learned to other people. Does that answer you?
Yeah, it does. It does. And, you know, we can be pretty loose here when it comes to accuracy, but around what year did you come over to Europe to start studying? Was it in the 80s, around then?
Now, I don't want to be very specific because of the background. I'm in Europe. And in Europe, if you speak about Islam, not against Islam, I never said anything against Islam. When you say you do something against somebody, it's to do negative things. I'm quoting from chapter and verse from the Quran. How am I against Islam? Tell me, please.
No, for sure, for sure. You know, I think we should all be able to criticize an ideology.
So I'm not against Islam. I'm revealing the facts about Islam. So the less I give about information about myself, the safer I am. As you know very well, in Europe, especially in England, they protect Muslims more than Christians and Jews.
Yeah, for sure. Let me rephrase the question then for you then. Why, when you came over to Europe, was Islam something that you wanted to study? What kind of interaction did you have with Islam that raised your suspicions, let's say, and led you to feel that was something to explore?
Sorry, now I got your message. Okay. Because we were taught in the schools the Quran, and you had to study part of the Quran, not the whole of the Quran, but they had to have a good starter on the Quran. And there were many quotes coming into the Quran from the Bible. But I didn't have a Bible to compare it with. So when I came to Europe and I had access to, and I was having the Bible, and I'm opening the Bible, I'm trying to compare the verses of the Quran with the Bible,
Yeah.
and they couldn't match with anything. Nothing written in the Quran has an exact piece of information as it is in the Bible. So it is concocted. Let me put it in a very simple terms. Muslims tell you that the Quran was revealed to Muhammad by an angel called Jibril, which is according to them is Gabriel, from Allah. But we only have the word of one single human being who says that. And who is that? Muhammad bin Abdullah. For 1400 years, nobody ever asked the question, or nobody pointed out this simple truth. All that humanity has ever had, all that humanity has, are the words of a man called Muhammad bin Abdullah, that he received revelations through the angel Gabriel from Allah. There is no corroborating evidence, by the way. Not a single, there is no report in all of the hadiths and all the traditions of Islam about Muhammad that any of his wives, the intimate people with him, or his closest companions, ever saw him talk to the angel Gabriel or even heard him talk to the angel Gabriel. So what do we have? We have the words of a man who says he did that.
Indeed.
Why should I trust him? Why should anybody? I mean, I could say now to you, I get revelations from God, not Allah, from God. And this is why I am the greatest authority on Islam. Would you believe me? You don't have to believe me, but some people. What I'm getting at is my word against nobody.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm saying I get revelations from God. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. But it's the word of a single human being that he received these revelations. But something else is also wrong. When you read the Quran, not even study, when you read it, Allah contradicts himself. In one verse, he says to the Muslims, each Muslim can fight 10 infidels. When the Muslims complained to him that it is impossible for one individual to fight 10, the next verse says, okay, Allah is going to make it simple for you. Each one of you can fight 2. But if Allah is God, God is omniscient. How is it possible that God didn't know that you can't have one single man fighting against 10 and winning? Simple question. Nobody asked simple question. Nobody. Until me. Until IQ. Am I bragging? The answer is no. You know very well. I have over $1.5 million worth of challenges to every human being to prove me wrong on anything. I've had it for 12 years. I haven't lost a dime. Not a single dime. Why doesn't any imam come and debate me? I have begged again and again. I had, by the way, I have got 1,300 radio interviews with America. This is the first radio interview I have in Europe, which is with you now, today.
Why do you think that is?
Because the Europeans are brain dead. The leaders, not only the people are brain dead. The leaders, the reason the people are brain dead, because the media made them brain dead. And the media follow the political elite. Political elite think, they honestly, truly believe that Islam is a religion. Islam is not a religion, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you what, calling Islam peaceful and or a religion are two of the most egregious lies that have ever been insinuated into the human consciousness. Can I prove what I'm saying? Of course I have. I've proven it again and again and again. It's not a problem. Proving it is not a problem. Having people believe what I'm telling them based on knowledge, that is the problem.
Indeed.
So the education system in Europe, the same education, similar to the education system in America, is leftist, globally. Everybody is equal. Not everybody is equal. Humans are only equal under the law. Otherwise, we're not equal. Somebody can be clever, somebody is stupid. Somebody is a genius, somebody is not a genius. Somebody loves to work and excel. The other one doesn't want to work and doesn't do anything and becomes on benefits. How are we equal? Our fingers are not equal. Nobody thinks simple terms, and yet they are simple. Everything I discuss about Islam is simple. Nothing is complicated. The message of Islam is simple. What do they say to us? You know very well. Now we spent 9 hours. Muslims started with Muhammad 1400 years ago. Split humanity into two parts. Ummat Muhammad, which is the Muslims, and Ummat al-Kuffar, which means the land, the people of the infidels. Ummat Muhammad are the Muslims, the followers of Muhammad. They are the enemies of every single human being who is not a Muslim. Currently, Ummat Muhammad is 20% of humanity, 1.5 billion people. We, infidels, so-called kuffar, the illegitimate human beings, according to Islam, are 80% of humanity. Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Jews, Zoroastrians, agnostics, atheists, pagans. That's who we are. They call us infidels. As an insult. I don't know if you noticed, in my articles, I always write IQ and Rassooli, kafir and proud. Of course I'm proud. Because we, Ummat al-Kuffar, the one they are insulting, I put it in a different way. Ummat Muhammad, 20% of humanity, is the least productive, least inventive, least creative in human history. And they are trying to destroy us and overcome us and subjugate us, 80% of humanity. The nation of infidels, Ummat al-Kuffar, I call it. By the way, nobody ever used that before. I'm the only one. Ummat al-Kuffar means nation of infidels. We, Ummat al-Kuffar, 80% of humanity, are the most productive, most inventive, most creative, and most powerful in human history. And yet our leaders are running like a chicken without a head when it comes to Islam.
Indeed. Just a quick question. Why doesn't Islam embrace science?
Simple. Every Imam will tell you that the Quran, Muhammad said in the Quran that Muslims should learn. Ilm. Ilm is knowledge. It's in Arabic. It's in the Quran. But the same Imams will not tell you that the ilm that Muhammad was talking about was not science, was not architecture, was not technology, was not music. It was science only of Islam, of the Quran and the Hadith. That's why they don't excel. There are 57 Muslim majority states in the world, 1.5 billion people. They don't have a single university accredited. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
No, there isn't. In 57 Muslim states, there isn't a single university accredited anywhere outside Dar al-Islam. Doesn't exist. But I always compare the Muslims with Israel. Why? Because Israel is a tiny nation whom they hate. And this tiny nation of 8,000 square miles, literally 8,000 square miles, with 8 million people, 2 million of whom are Arabs, have 6, I think, or 10 Nobel Prize winners. Ummat Muhammad of 57 Muslim majority states, they don't have 5. So does that answer you? I'm proving it. By the way, when I'm answering you, I'm also proving to you why they don't know anything about science. The only time they learn science is when they go to America.
Okay, so just a quick question then to focus on. Just want to explore this a little bit. So let's say in Islamic countries, the education system, would they even focus on the standard sciences like physics, biology, and chemistry, or would they ignore them totally?
We studied it. At school, we studied it.
Okay.
But they can't excel because when they grow up, they are living in a Muslim country. The women have to wear the hijab. In my country, Iraq, nobody wore the hijab under our government.
Yeah.
Until Khomeini came. Until Saddam Hussein was overthrown. Nobody wore the hijab. By the way, in Egypt, under Jamal Abdel Nasser, the greatest leader of the Arab world, nobody wore the hijab except the low classes. Nobody. Now in Egypt, everybody wears the hijab, the women. In all the Muslim countries, the women, by the way, the hijab is not in the Quran. Yet every single woman who takes somebody to court in England or in France tells the judge, it's in my religion. Bull crap. 200,000 pounds says you can't find a single verse in the Quran.
I'm gonna start for that money, IQ. I'm gonna start looking.
Yeah, please do. If I'm challenging you to find the word hijab anywhere in the Quran, denoting the covering the woman in any way, shape, or form. The word hijab is mentioned 4 times in the Quran. In each case, it is a curtain, a divide. Nothing to do with the covering of the head of the woman. Never. So, they go to court. The judge is an idiot because he hasn't studied anything. And they find on behalf of the Muslims against the Christians. Every single time, by the way.
Why do you think that the rise of the hijab and the burqa has become more prominent over the last 10, 15, 20 years then?
This burqa, I'll pay you $1 million if you find the burqa anywhere in Islam. $1 million. They don't exist. These burqa and the niqab, these started to exist under the Muslim in Afghanistan. The Shah of Afghanistan at the time, he had beautiful women and he didn't want anybody else to see them. So he covered them. And it became the national thing. It has nothing to do with the religion. Islam is not a religion, first of all. Let's get this straight. Allah is the same as the God of the Bible. Bull crap. 100,000 pounds says nobody can prove me wrong. Allah is not the same as the God of the Bible.
Now, look, I've got a great question for you, which is, after listening to you for the last couple of days, I think this kind of goes in brilliantly as well. So, talking about Islam not being a religion, is Islam a religion or a cult?
Cult. The cult of Muhammad. I'll tell you why. As I always explain everything. Nowhere in the Quran is it prohibited to draw human figures. Nowhere in the Quran tells you can't sing. Nowhere in the Quran tells you musical instruments are from the devil. Nowhere. But they are used in Islam. They tell you it's prohibited. Why? Because in the hadith, which are the traditions about Islam, Muhammad forbade it, not Allah. So what do we have? We have a belief system who follows Muhammad, not Allah. And the proof of the pudding, every single male Muslim on planet Earth has to emulate Muhammad, the most perfect man that was ever created. Well, if they are emulating Muhammad, how can they be also at the same time a religion? They're not following a divine ordinance. They are following the traditions and the methodology of Muhammad. They tell you ISIS is an aberration. That's not true. ISIS is the most perfect Islamic entity. While Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda followed the Quran word by word, ISIS follows the Quran and the Hadith letter by letter, comma by comma, and dot by dot. Did Muhammad use fire to torture the people he conquered? Yes. Did he plunder other people? Yes. Did he rape little girls? Yes. Did he rape women in general? Yes. Was he a pathological liar? Yes. Was he a mass murderer? Yes. What does ISIS do? Exactly the same. They sell women into slavery for sex. Muhammad did that. So how are they following a God? This is cultism, not divine. And there is no human being on planet Earth who can tell me otherwise. You can prove me wrong, let's put it this way. They tell me otherwise.
It's very
they
true.
can't prove me wrong. No human being can prove me wrong. I know it sounds like a brag, but it isn't a
No, that's good stuff. So would you say that Islam's got an intrinsic link with terror then?
Good God. Islam and terror are the same. What did Muhammad say in Bukhari? I have been made victorious with terror. I didn't say that. Muhammad said that. Repeatedly in the hadith. Google it, by the way. Anybody listening, all they have to do is Google what I'm talking about. Google. I have been made victorious with terror. Muhammad said that. He was a terrorist. He was the head of the first organized crime syndicate in human history, based in Medina.
What did he mean by that when he's with the reference to terror? What was his definition of terror?
Terror? Wait a minute. Is it ambiguous, the word terror? It's to bring fear into humanity. What does ISIS do? They show you on television and on YouTube how they're cutting the throat of other people. They're threatening you. They're making you scared. That's terror. And when you're scared, your wits are not about you. When you're scared, you're peeing in your pants. When you're scared, they win. They can't win against me. Oh yeah, they can kill me. Obviously they can kill me. I get threats all the time. My emails are full of threats. How they're going to torture me, how I'm going to end up in Allah's hell. Well, I'm not worried about Allah's hell because I know Allah is not God, so I'm not worried about it. But this is what it is. Terror. Islam is about terror. I'll tell you what. You heard of Yusuf al-Qaradawi?
Possibly. I'm not too sure. Not too sure.
He is the foremost imam on Sunni Islam. He is what they call the spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay.
Okay. Google it. I'll tell you. Go. It's amazing. Al-Qaradawi was interviewed by an Arab news TV station. I think it was the Saudi Arabia or Qatar. In Arabic, but subtitled in English. He asked him, the interviewer, why is it mandated in the Quran that people who leave Islam should be... Al-Qaradawi is over 80 years old. And because he's over 80 years old, I'm not generalizing, in his case, he has lost it. He is not as clever as he used to be. He is not in control of his thinking. So he gave him the most honest answer I have ever heard him say in all his life. What did he say to the guy? He said, had it not been mandated in the Quran that anyone who leaves Islam should be slaughtered, there would have been no Islam. So Islam only exists through terror. I didn't say that. Muhammad said that. I didn't say that. Al-Qaradawi said that.
Why do you think Al-Qaradawi said that?
He made a mistake. I told you, he's not in control anymore.
But still, the logic behind his statement, what do you think he actually means?
No, it's exactly what he meant. It's a Freudian slip of the tongue, for God's sake. He said it the way it should be. Had it not been mandated in the Quran that anyone who leaves Islam should be slaughtered, nobody would be a Muslim. By the way.
But why is that? Why is that? Why does he think that's the case? Why does he think if you weren't going to be punished by death that Muslims would be leaving Islam?
Islam is hate-mongering, war-mongering, misogynist, racist, duplicitous, hypocritical, intolerant, ungodly. You show me, I tell you what, another 200,000 pounds says you cannot find a single operative verse in the whole of the Quran showing any compassion and mercy towards unbelievers. 200,000 pounds. There are 6,236 verses. You can't find a single operative verse in the Quran showing we are 80% of humanity.
Yeah. What percentage of that do you think is a neutral statement to the disbeliever, and how much of it is a violent statement towards the disbeliever?
The Quran?
Yeah, when you're saying like all this stuff, when it talks about the disbeliever, none of it's positive. How much of it's neutral and how much of it's aggressive?
There are 108 verses only in the Quran which incites Muslims to kill unbelievers. It incites them. What do you think they're teaching them in the mosque? What do you think the Imam, followers of Muhammad, in the mosque every Friday? Come on, tell me. He is quoting from the Quran. He called Jiz. Jiz means a portion. The Quran is divided in 52 portions to cover the 52 weeks. What is the Imam telling the followers of Muhammad? He's quoting from the Quran. And the Quran tells them to hate the very people they live amongst. There is not a chance in hell, none, that a Muslim in Europe, that a Muslim in the Christian countries, that a Muslim in the Hindu countries can be loyal to these countries or to the people of these countries. Cannot be done. Yeah. You don't believe me, do you?
Yeah, well, you know, if you just put it very simply, the fact that they refer to Europe as the House of War, how can they treat it any, you know, how can they treat the House of War kindly? Surely that's going to just straight away allude to the fact that there's going to be violence.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I have to back it up with even more.
Mm.
And the only way to back it up is to quote from the Quran. I'm going to quote from the Quran now. Al-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 29, says, fight, qatilu, those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden, which has been forbidden by Allah and His Apostle Muhammad, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, Islam, even if they are of the people of the book, that is Christians and Jews, until they pay the jizya. The jizya is an honorary tax for not being a Muslim. And the Jews and the Christians have to pay it with willing submission and feel themselves humiliated. Just to make sure, again, that the listeners would believe what I'm revealing. I would put to you forth a challenge worth 200,000 pounds to the first person who can show us all a single operative verse in Muhammad's Quran that demonstrates any compassion and mercy towards unbelievers, infidels, kuffar. What more can I tell you? Now, there is a better one. And this is a clincher. I mean, everything in Islam is disgusting. Everything. Al-Ma'idah chapter 5 verse 51. This is a beauty. O you who believe, Muslim, take not the Jews, Yahud in Arabic, and Christians, Nasara, for your friends and protectors. They are but friends and protectors to each other. And he amongst you Muslims that turns to them for friendship is of them. Dear listeners, the implications of the last sentence is of immense importance. And I repeat it. And he amongst you Muslims that turns to them, the Jews and the Christians, for friendship is of the means. That any follower of Muhammad who befriends or is under the rule of Christians or Jews or any non-Muslim group would be considered apostates to Islam, outsiders to Islam, enemies of Islam who must be slaughtered. In a nutshell, no Muslim in the UK or USA or any non-Muslim country can ever be loyal to the American Constitution or to the European constitutions because they are man-made, not from Allah's Sharia. Nor can any Muslim in any non-Muslim country be a loyal citizen. Because non-Muslims are called infidels, kuffar, unbelievers, kafirun, to be either subjugated or exterminated. Again, find somebody to prove me wrong. Cannot be done.
Well, with that being said, would you say that political correctness, especially in Europe, is enabling Islam?
Yes. It's destroyed. It is destroying Europe and Europeans, this political correctness. But there is a shift now. I don't know if you noticed, Ben. In Germany, in the last election, the so-called Nazis, well, they're not Nazis, they're patriots.
Yep.
The so-called right wing have 93 members now in parliament. It never happened in 60 years in the history of Germany. In Austria, a 31-year-old young man became chancellor. And he is now the foremost defender of Austria against Islam. It's shifting. The pendulum is shifting. People are waking up. It's taken them a long, long time. I honestly believe there will be civil war between Muslims and non-Muslims in Europe 3 years ago.
In 3 years?
Yeah, 3 years. It's going to happen in the next 3 years. It will happen. Because Muslims will never integrate. They're not allowed to integrate. I just gave you the verses.
Yeah.
And these are not out of context, by the way. Every Muslim imam will tell you it's taken out of context. Okay, let the imam debate me.
Yeah. That's the get out clause, isn't it? Get out free card in Monopoly. It's the whole context in Islam. It's the card they play the whole time. Oh, you haven't got it in the right context. It don't mean that.
No, they tell you, first of all, do you speak Arabic? No.
Yeah.
You don't understand. Well, I speak Arabic. My mother tongue is Arabic. I come from Iraq. I grew up among Arab people and Muslim people and Christian people and Jewish people and Hindus. I have a very good background. So I speak the language. I studied the Quran. I studied the Hadith. I studied the Bible. I studied the New Testament. How is anybody going to go against me and win? They don't exist. Not because I say so. I always say, you know, it sounds like I'm bragging. Okay. So I'm a hot air balloon. Very simple. Pinprick it, bring it crashing down to earth.
Yeah.
That's simple. Cannot be done.
I hear this quite often with informed critics of Islam. They are so confident in their arguments that they talk like you do. They're willing to put money on the line. They are that steadfast in their views and beliefs that they just know they're not going to lose an argument. But if that's the case, when you are engaging with a Muslim who's, you know, really does adhere to Islam, what is his reaction when you start dissecting his views and beliefs?
First of all, nobody ever in the history of print, in the history of TV or radio, ever backed up their word with money. I'm the only one. That's no brag, check it. You can always double check me. Second, Muslims do not debate. Do you know a company called Memory, MEMRI?
Yes, I do.
Excellent. You should know, if you watch the programs of Muslims debating each other in every Muslim country or Arab country, what do? They either shout each other down or shoot each other down.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, they don't debate. Watch it. It's amazing. It's prime time television in Egypt, prime time television in Syria, prime time television in Iraq. Two people debating their completely opposite opinion. Instead of discussing it in a rational manner, they start shouting at each other and then physically attacking each other. Sometimes they take a gun out to shoot somebody, or they use a chair to hit somebody else on the head. Come on.
Yeah,
this is Islam. This is Islam.
Yeah,
yet our leaders keep telling us that it has nothing to do with terror. Every verse of relevance in the Quran is to do with terror.
It's like they associate Islam with Christianity and Judaism. They think it's going to be the same type of basic core principles, and it's just anything but. So everything that's coming out of our political leaders' mouths is just pure ignorance. And the more the public get informed, the more that's just going to become obvious and apparent.
First of all, the only way that Islam can be compatible with Christianity and Judaism is if Allah is the same as the God of the Bible. But Allah is not the same as the God of the Bible. Allah, by the way, you should know by now, Allah was and still is the name, okay, of the supreme rock god of pagan Arabia.
Yep.
Among 360 gods and goddesses or deities in stone, centuries before Muhammad converted or metamorphosed him into the God of the Bible.
It's great. Can I just stop you there for 1 second? Because you're the first person who I've heard refer to Allah as the rock god. A lot of the other critics of Islam refer to him as the moon god. So how comes there's a difference in views?
But how do you show the moon god? In a rock. Which is which one? The black stone. Allah resided in the black stone.
Which is a meteorite.
The meteorite. By the way, nobody ever kissed the black stone before Muhammad. The pagan Arabs never kissed the black stone. You know why?
No.
No, something else. The black stone was white.
Okay.
It was white because it was a meteorite. Okay? But it turned to black. Who says that? It's in the hadith. It turned to black because the women of pagan Arabia used to touch their period, blood, and touch the stone to give them fertility.
Okay.
Double check. It's there. Muhammad kissed the black stone. And if you double check me again, Umar ibn al-Khattab, his companion, it's recorded in Bukhari hadith. He said, had it not been that Muhammad kissed you, the stone, I would not have kissed you.
Okay. So hold on, just quickly. Let's just let me get my head around that point. You saying that if Muhammad didn't kiss the stone, then he would never have had any relationship with Allah?
No, because he believed the stone is got to do with Allah. That's why
Okay.
he kissed it.
Okay. And Allah as well, for our listeners, is a pagan god. It wasn't something just new for Muhammad, was he? He'd been around in pagan Arabia for a fair while.
Yeah, it was the name of the pagan god. By the way, Allah of the pagan gods, he had 3 daughters, Allah wal Uzza wal Manat. Allah, al Uzza wal Manat. You know, there are 1.5 billion Muslims with 500 million other people who support them. And they don't know why on every minaret they have the shape of a crescent and a star. They don't know. 1.5 million people. 1.5 billion people. Why do they have almost every mosque, by the way, many of the flags of Islam, they have the crescent and the star. Why do they have a crescent and a star?
No idea.
But you should.
Sorry.
No, I'll tell you, I just gave you the starter. Allah's daughter called Allah wal Uzza wal Manat. Now, Allah was symbolized by the crescent of the moon. Allah was the goddess in the crescent of the moon. Al-Uzza is Venus, which is a star. So even in 1400 years after Muhammad tried to become a monotheist, they carry the symbols of paganism on every single mosque. Nobody before ever said, double check me.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable because nobody has explained why Muslims have the crescent. They don't know. Muslims don't know.
Yeah, indeed.
Ask a Muslim.
Now, you were saying before about Muhammad being part of the monotheism, yeah, so essentially sharing the same God as the Jews and the Christians. But if that was the case, surely there would be stories in the Quran that would be told in the Bible, and that there would be 100% compatibility between the two. But if you study the stories in the Quran and the Bible that have got some, supposed to be the same, there is a lot of discrepancies, aren't there?
It's infinite discrepancy.
Yeah.
The differences are infinite. There's no compatibility. Look, the Quran says Abraham is a prophet. Abraham was not a prophet. The Quran says Jesus was a prophet. Jesus was not a prophet. The Quran says Moses was a prophet. Moses was not a prophet. Even the Jews don't call Moses a prophet. They call him the lawgiver. And it wasn't his law, it was Allah, it was God's law, not Allah. So, when you read the Quran, which you have, all of a sudden, in the first chapter 2, for example, Abraham and Ishmael built the foundations of the Kaaba. How did Abraham and Ishmael, who were in Canaan, almost 850 miles away from Mecca, build a pagan shrine in Mecca? How did they do that? How did they travel from Canaan, which is Israel today, to build a pagan shrine in Mecca? Tell me, please. But that's what they tell you. That's what the Quran says. Nothing in the Quran is real. Every letter, I'll give you a summation of Islam. Every letter, word, verse, ayah, and chapter surah in the Quran were never revealed to Muhammad by any God called Allah or any angel called Gabriel. Because every letter, word, verse, and chapter are the product of Muhammad's imagination, the secretions of his warped mind. In fact, they represent his alter ego, his autobiography, but very cleverly projected into the unsuspecting mouths of Allah and Gabriel to give them the aura of sanctity and divinity. Again, there is no human being on planet Earth who can prove me wrong on what I just said.
Indeed.
None.
There's also another thing as well with Islam, which is the reverence that Muhammad has. Even in the Shahada, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. That's putting Muhammad and Allah on parity. Now, surely if he was the prophet of his God, there should be a huge, huge distance between the two.
But you're right. If you look in Hagia Sophia, you know what Hagia Sophia is?
No.
That's the greatest cathedral of Byzantine Christianity in Istanbul,
Okay.
which they converted into a mosque. You will have Allah on one side and Muhammad on the other side in exactly the same size, the same height.
Wow.
Allah and Muhammad are the same. I just told you, nobody revealed anything to Muhammad. Every single item in the Quran are the product of Muhammad. And he concocted everything, pretending that Allah is revealing it. But it was he who was revealing it in the name of Allah. It's simple, it's not complicated, believe me.
Indeed. Now, I talked about this in my previous episode, and a great example of that is the satanic verses. But are there more examples of when Muhammad's, had a message from God and he uses that to advance a certain situation that he's in?
No, the beauty of the satanic verses, and they tell you it's not true. You find it in the book by Ibn Ishaq, which is Sirat Rasulullah, the biography of Muhammad. Ibn Ishaq was the grandson of somebody who was forced to convert. He was a Christian who had to convert to Islam. And he was the first one, the author of the biography of Muhammad. But he wrote it 140 years after Muhammad was dead. So the earliest biography is 140 years after. And they tell you, but Ibn Ishaq is a liar, he exaggerated, but Ibn Ishaq, every single hadith after Ibn Ishaq, by Bukhari, by Al-Majah, by Tirmidhi, by Muslim, is based upon Ibn Ishaq. Because you see, the Imams of Islam, the so-called scholars of Islam, will never admit there is any problem with their belief system. They can't. The minute they admit there is a problem, they are murdered. And the best thing for them is to leave, and if they leave to apostatize, they will be murdered also. This is what I said. This is why Al-Qardawi said.
Yeah.
Had it not been mandated to murder people who leave Islam, there would have been no Islam.
Okay, look, I've got a quick question for you as well. You were saying that the biography of Muhammad was written, what was it, 140 years after his death?
140 years.
Okay, so when Muhammad went into the cave and first got the revelations from the angel Jibril, and then came out and revealed them to people, he never wrote these revelations down. No, it was all just it was an oral tradition going on in pagan Arabia, wasn't it? So he would just repeat what he heard.
First of all, Ben.
Yeah.
Let's get this straight. Nobody knows that he was in a cave.
Okay.
Nobody saw him in a cave. Nobody heard him talk to this creature in the cave that he later associated with Jibril. And when he had the revelation, if you read Bukhari, you will find out how Muhammad commits suicide even with his words. He said that whoever that was there, let's call it Angel Jibril, told him, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق. That means, he said, read or recite in the name of your God, the one who created man from a clot. This is the first verse revealed to Muhammad. But according to the Bible, mankind was not created from a clot, which is dead material. Mankind was created from the dust of the earth. Hence, the very first verse of Revelation is bullcrap. It contradicts the Bible. It contradicts the God of the Bible. The first verse ever revealed to Muhammad contradicts the verses of the Bible. And yet nobody points this out. It's simple. Nobody points this out. Nobody.
Yeah. You're talking about the Bible. Jerusalem was mentioned in the Bible, 667 times. You were saying Mecca's mentioned in the Quran a big total of 0. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, Mecca is mentioned only once in the Quran as a
Only
valley,
once.
not as a town, not as a city.
Ah.
Why? I yeah, it's all right, but it doesn't. It's not a city. It wasn't mentioned as, and then they call it Mecca, and they tell you Mecca and Mecca are the same. Ah, hey, come on, don't bullcrap me.
Okay.
One is Mecca, the other one is Mecca. One is a B, the other one is an M. They're not the same. Everything about Islam is deception.
Mm.
And taqiyya, you know what taqiyya is?
Yes, indeed, indeed, indeed.
Taqiyya is religiously sanctioned deception by Muslims against non-Muslims. Everything about Islam is taqiyya. Everything about Islam is lies, 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 lies.
When did Muhammad first start using this concept of taqiyya for his own gain?
Taqiyya, he didn't use it, but he used it for his own followers.
Yeah, okay.
And he used it in the last chapter. Sorry, yeah, the last surah before the last surah. Chapter 2 of the Quran, Al-Baqarah, was in fact should have been chapter 113.
Makes sense.
And chapter 9 of the Quran should have been the last one, chapter 114. But of course, the Quran was not compiled in like the Bible. The Bible flows like a river. There is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an ending. It's continuous. The Quran is a jumble of bullcrap, of garbage. You have a verse talking about Muhammad, another verse, the next verse is talking about Abraham, the third verse is talking about Jacob, and the fourth verse is talking about pagan Arabia. There is no sequence. When they tell you Abraham, it doesn't tell you in which country he was born. It doesn't tell you in which age he was born. They tell you about Moses, the same thing. Who was Moses? A prophet. Really? And that's it? Finished? There's no historical background in the whole of the Quran. None. Zero.
Indeed. I tell you what, I've got a question, and you're a pretty informed man, so I'd like to hear your answer for this. After the death of Muhammad, and then you had Abu Bakr installed as the first rightly guided caliph, when did the split happen between Shia and Sunni, and why has that never ever been resolved? Why is there no peace between the two sects now? I know it's a huge question, but I'd love to hear your answer.
No, it's not a huge question. It's a very simple question, and the answer is also simple.
Okay.
The day Muhammad died, Islam split in two. The day Muhammad died. I'll tell you what happened. When he died, Ali bin Abi Talib, who was his cousin and son-in-law, had to attend to the funeral. The companions of Muhammad didn't attend to the funeral. They gathered amongst themselves to find a solution to have who will lead the Islamic entity. They were more interested in politics than in the belief system that Muhammad gave them. So while he was attending to the burial, they decided between themselves that Abu Bakr will take over. Ali, why should Abu Bakr? I am his cousin. I'm married to his daughter Fatima. I should have been elected. From that day on, the Shia followed Muhammad and the Sunnis followed the companions of Muhammad. And they are irreconcilable.
But didn't Ali then become the fourth rightly guided caliph? He actually got that position, not immediately, but he got it after a while. So how comes they split in two then, if Ali still got that position of power?
But that's the two. Those who support the idea that a Khalifa can only be from the bloodline of Muhammad, that means the descendants of Ali. And those who support the idea that any Muslim who knows the Quran and is a decent leader, a human being, can lead the whole of Islamic entity. That's it. That's the difference. But they've been murdering each other for 1400 years.
Yeah.
Look at them now.
No, indeed. I remember when I first started learning about Islam, I was watching a documentary on the History Channel, and it started talking about all the caliphs after Muhammad. And I was amazed at the amount of war and bloodshed that just happened pretty much immediately after his death. It was pretty crazy. And one of the things that struck me, I believe it's the Battle of the Camel. And that was between Aisha, wasn't it? Muhammad's wife, and then also his stepson Ali. So what happened there with that battle, and why did they fight?
Well, again, it had to do with power.
Yeah.
Aisha wanted to be among the leaders of Khulafa. And Hassan and Hussein were, of course, no, it wasn't Hassan Hussein, it was Yazid. The
Zayd,
irony
yeah.
of
Okay.
Islam, yeah, the irony of Islam is this. The very people who hated Muhammad, Bani Umayyah, the very people who hated Muhammad and who Muhammad forced to convert to Islam, took over the Khilafah. They took the Khilafah. They were the first one to take over the Khilafah. Not Abu Bakr. That's nothing to do with it. I'm talking about the empire. Empire was taken by the Umayyah. It took the 100 years before the Abbasid, which are the followers of the family of Muhammad, took over.
Okay.
But that's Islam. There is nothing coherent about Islam. It's garbage. No matter how you look at it, it's garbage.
Yeah.
There is no logic in it.
Well,
why would any... Sorry, go on.
no, sorry for interrupting you, but what I was going to say is that we hear it a lot within Europe now about Islamophobia, you know? Islam, Muslims, they're being persecuted. If there's a terrorist attack, the narrative that comes out of the media is, oh, but then there's a Muslim walking down the street and they're getting shouted at or they're getting looked at badly and this is horrible. Don't oppress the Muslims. But how about the way that Islam treats Christians? You know, everyone thinks that it's the Muslims who are the most persecuted religion throughout the world. It's not, is it? The Christians have been taking a real beating from the hands of Islam.
Ben, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
What do you understand by the term Islamophobia?
It's a divisive term used by ignorant people to shut people like me up.
No, forget about it. I know what it's intending to do.
Okay.
What does Islamophobia mean by people who use it?
An unfounded fear of Muslims.
Yeah, but it's not. I'll tell you what it is.
Go on.
Google phobia.
Google.
Google it as I'm talking to you.
Okay, I'm doing it.
Phobia represents irrational fear. There are thousands of phobias. Irrational fear. Double check it. And
On Wikipedia, we've got a phobia is a type of anxiety disorder defined by a persistent fear of an object or situation.
Yeah, but what they should tell you, the idiots in Wikipedia, it's irrational. For example, arachnophobia,
Yeah.
fear of spiders. It's irrational. These people who fear spiders have never met a spider. They've seen a spider, but no, a spider never bit them or anything. But they have fear. There are fear of heights, fear of confined spaces, fear. There are 10, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 fears in the catalog in psychology. They're all irrational. But fearing Islam is rational. Why? Because the Muslims tell you, if you don't submit to Sharia, we shall exterminate you. So Islamophobia is a contradiction in terms, it's an oxymoron. The trouble is that the people who use it against you and me, well, against me, I can crucify them. I can answer them back. But against most human beings who are ordinary, they can't answer them because they don't know what it means. Phobia is irrational fear. Fearing Islam is totally irrational. Not fearing Islam would be irrational. Hence, phobia is an oxymoron. End of conversation. Not fearing Islam is irrational. Fearing Islam is rational.
Certainly so. Certainly so. So how are we going to get our European leaders to actually take on board the threat of Islam and what it poses?
You can't. They have to be removed. Our European leaders will have to be removed.
Which is going to happen, really, I think, by the process of democracy. You alluded to it before, but also, you know, with Geert Wilders having a very successful campaign, Marine Le Pen as well, over in the UK with Brexit. There is a tide change within the public, but not within the political narrative. And that's one that we, you know, hope to change. And you're saying the only way to do it is to get these guys out of office.
you can't remove, you have to remove them politically
Yeah.
or with a revolution. Because these people have been entrenched for the last 50 years. Many, almost the entirety of the elite of Europe have had the same agenda in the last 50 years. Globalism. Everybody is equal. All religions are equal. All people are equal. They're not equal. All religions are not equal. All belief systems are not equal.
Certainly not. Now, look, England is very much influenced by the foreign policy of the United States, and the United States has a very cozy relationship with the Saudi Arabian royal family. Do you think that has an influence and trickle down into why us in the UK are very complicit, let's say, to Islam?
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't look, just because somebody is an idiot, you don't follow them, for God's sake. Especially, they are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, just because America is doing doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. No, we have a problem. It's called socialism or socialist thinking.
Uh-huh.
It started 60 years ago. It's not yesterday or today. Socialism theoretically is an excellent idea. But look what socialism is in Venezuela. Look at communism all over the world.
Yeah.
The only two communist states that actually communist still are North Korea and Cuba. China is not communist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
China has one of the biggest middle class in the world, which is capitalist. It doesn't matter they have Mao Zedong. It doesn't matter that they have so-called the Communist Party. But the majority of the people now in China have learned to have a good life. And they're not going to go back to what Mao Zedong wanted them to do. The collectivization is not going to happen anymore.
The Chinese are a very wealthy nation now. I went, it was a few years back, but I went to Las Vegas and just walking through the casinos, I was amazed at the amount of Asians, Chinese people that they were. They were definitely, I'd say, 30% of the people you'd see. They love gambling. It's part of their culture, but they'd all walk around in their very expensive handbags as well. You could see that the Chinese, especially the ones that traveled, are extremely wealthy.
China became wealthy because 90% of what was imported in America was from China.
Okay.
Maybe 40-50% of what imported in Europe was from China.
Yeah.
It was the Europeans and the Americans who created China, not Mao Zedong, and not the Communist Party. It was the Americans who invested in China so that they can get back cheap material.
Yeah.
Toys R Us, where do you think they manufacture it? China.
That's a good point.
Literally 90% of items created in imported in the United States of America for everyday life are Chinese. That's why the Chinese economy is thriving. Take computers, take cars, take mobiles. Where were they created? Not created, built. In China.
Of course.
In China. And China is 1.6 billion people.
Are you aware of how China treats Islam?
Chinese have a problem now with the Muslims. And the Chinese are not like Europeans and the Americans, half idiots.
Yeah.
The Chinese will take care of the Muslims the way the Chinese would do it. By extermination, by force. I know, a politically correct somebody listening to me, oh, another fascist. No, I'm not a fascist. Islam is fascism. I will not accept fascism to take over my life, or the life of Europe, or the life of any country. And if I have to do it to them, what they intend to do to me, I'll do it to them first. Yeah. It's very simple.
So you're optimistic that China's going to have the right approach when it comes to Islam?
China already forbade the Quran in the Muslim territory. They collected all the Qurans from the Muslim territory already. The Chinese don't play games.
No.
They are ruthless. And they don't have democracy or so-called democracy. They're ruthless. Okay?
Yeah.
And they are not going to sit down and allow a bunch of Muslim fundamentalists disrupt their nation. They will exterminate them.
So do you think Europe could take a page out of the Chinese textbook of how to treat Islam?
But you're right. You said it earlier. There will be civil war. In Europe, there has to be civil war. Otherwise, Europe is finished. It will become an Pakistan, an Islamistan.
Well, just quickly, you said to me when we first started emailing, and I told you I just lived outside London. Your response was, Londonistan. You're the first person from there to talk. So you've obviously seen London firsthand. It's changed remarkably, no?
Yes, but there is the problem started with Blair,
Mm.
Prime Minister Blair. He started importing Muslims. He started, and nobody stopped it, and they keep importing them. There isn't a single Muslim. When I say Muslim, by the way, when people say there are moderate Muslims, really? Let me ask you a question.
Mm.
Have you ever heard of a moderate Nazi, militant Nazi, radical Nazi, or extremist Nazi ever?
No.
No. The same thing, never about communists. Never.
Mm.
Why all of a sudden with Islam we have shades? Why with Islam there are shades? But Islam is monolithic. There are no shades in Islam. Mm-hmm. Islam tells you are either a Muslim, Sharia compliant, or you are a kafir. Where are the shades? I want to know.
I don't
So
know.
the ones who are subverting the people in Europe are our leaders. The worst enemy of Europe and the worst enemy of America are the news media. Mm-hmm. They're more dangerous than ISIS. Why? ISIS tells you frankly, you submit to Sharia, you're all right. You don't, you're exterminated. Our media tells us the opposite. No, ISIS is an aberration. ISIS is not an aberration. I'll give you an example. Chapter 47, called Muhammad. The chapter is called Muhammad. Verse 4. It says, therefore, when you meet the unbelievers, infidels, kuffar, chop off their necks. This is the exact verse that ISIS, Hamas, Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, and every believing Muslim agrees to and tries to fulfill. There are no shades, none, zero. And who said that also? Erdogan. Erdogan, the prime minister, come president, come dictator of Turkey. 2 years ago, he was meeting with European Union leaders. He said, I'm sick and tired, by the way, that is also on web. I'm sick and tired of you talking about shades of Islam, moderate Islam, this Islam. No. Islam is Islam. I didn't say that. He said that.
Turkey's a very good template for us to look at, isn't it? Because that used to be a Christian country, and now if I've got the percentages right in my head, I believe it's 99.7% Islamic. When Muslims move into a country that is not Islamic, it's only a period of time before they take it over, and it does turn into an Islamic state.
That's a fact. It's called stealth jihad. There are 2 types of jihad. I don't know if you read this article of mine. Imagine Islam as a spear. The spear has a tip and the spear has a shaft. The shaft by itself and the tip by itself are not as deadly. But put together, they're a deadly weapon. Now, the tip of the spear of Islam are the war jihadis. Who are the war jihadis? Al-Shabaab, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, all those terrorist groups are the tip of the spear of Islam. What is the shaft? The shaft are the so-called moderate Muslims, the silent majority Muslims, the bullcrap majority Muslims. The shaft is the stealth jihad. The stealth jihadis are the ones who supply the war jihadis with armament, with finance, with intelligence, with shelter, and without whom the jihadis of war wouldn't exist. Always imagine Islam as a spear. You will never go wrong.
It's a great analogy. It's a great analogy. Now, there's something I'm trying to work out, really, which is why Muslims go to school, go to the gym, do anything of note, considering that everything's predestined for them, yeah? So if they go and attack someone violently for a violent act of jihad, it's up to Allah what happens. They've got absolutely no say in the matter. It's already written out. So why would a Muslim go to university to go educate? Why would you do anything if it's already predestined by Allah?
It's a good question. You should ask the Muslims. Let me ask you a question. For 40 years, well, since 1973, Arab leaders have been sending their children, men, boys and girls, to be educated in Western Europe and in America. How is it possible after all these great educations, not one of them was able to change anything in Islam? 50 years. 50 years of generation after generation of education in the best universities on earth, and they haven't produced anybody or anything.
Well, it's as if they know, and I think a great example of this is what's happened recently with the English guy over in Dubai. You aware of this story when he touched a gentleman's hip and he was sentenced to go to jail for 3 or 5 years? Do you know this story?
Yeah.
Okay, so the gentleman dropped the charges, but the Islamic court still proceeded with it. They sentenced him, and just before he was going to go to jail, that's when the Saudi prince comes in and absolves him. He says, "No, you're fine. You can go home." Now, obviously, this guy's being educated, and I'm talking about the Saudi prince. He's been educated in the West and has a moral perspective from the West as well. So he makes sense of the situation, but he had to wait to the last minute. He had to wait the last minute to give the reprieve. He couldn't have done it straight away and be like, "This is crazy. It makes no sense." He was only trying to get past on. He's like, "No, this is Islamic law. We've got to respect it." But just at the last minute, he thought, "You know what? I'm going to show compassion here, and I'm going to let him go." Where he knows from the bottom of his heart that straight the minute this issue happened, it was a non-issue. It should never have been taken to the levels it did. So there's a difference, isn't there, between what he actually knows should be the correct thing to do and what Islam tells him to do.
True, but you are picking up one single item.
Yeah.
The new prince of Saudi Arabia, he is at the moment an enigma. He will have to survive assassination.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ulama of the Saudi government, the Saudi Arabia, ulama, the religious groups, will have to kill him. Why do they have to kill him? Because he's going against them.
Yeah.
He is trying to modernize Arabia to be in the 21st century. They know if he modernizes them, what will happen? The women of Saudi Arabia will have equal rights to men. They never had equal rights to men in 1400 years. So he is trying to start a tsunami. They will try their best to kill him. You'll find out. He knows, by the way. I have absolutely no doubt. He knows he's in danger.
Of course.
Al-Sisi of Egypt, by the way. Al-Sisi of Egypt, the military leader, now he's president. 2 years ago, he gave a talk at Al-Azhar University. Azhar University is the foremost Sunni university, religious university in the world. And he asked a rhetorical question from the imams in front of him. And I honestly thought he would be killed after that. He said to them, do you honestly believe that 1.6 billion Muslims can take over the whole of the world and convert them to Islam? He asked them a rhetorical question. I honestly believe they will kill him. They haven't killed him, but it's only a matter of time. It's only a matter of time because he's trying to also bring Egypt to modernity. Egypt was in modernity under Jamal Abdel Nasser, who died in 1974 or 75. When one of the religious leaders of Islam met him as president, he told him, you should make every woman in Egypt wear the hijab. Jamal Abdel Nasser said to him, why? If you want your wife and daughter to wear the hijab, let them wear the hijab. But I'm not going to order 10 million or 20 million women in my country to wear the hijab. And then he had to kill him.
Great.
Jamal Abdel Nasser had to kill him because he was undermining him. he had him hanged.
I've got a question for you. Is there a generational discrepancy in views of Islam? Where will that tide of change come from? Is it going to come from the younger generation that's never experienced a more liberal way of living? Or is it going to come from the older generation who want to go back to a previous lifestyle?
The older generation cannot do anything. They're too old.
Yeah.
If it has to come either from jihad, no, sorry, either from a revolution from within,
Yeah.
or from the leaders like Assisi enforcing a new rule. But to do so, he has to suppress the imams. It's always the imam throughout history. The Shah of Iran, for example, before Khomeini, he made Iran a Western society. He made Iranians into Western society. But the imams and the mullahs hated that. They hated that because they lost control. They want control. Imams want to control the Muslims not only spiritually, but by controlling them spiritually and mentally, they control them financially. It's always to do with money in the end. Always to do with money. That's what it is.
So who do you think will have a bigger influence on his population then? Would you say it would be this leader of Saudi at the moment who wants to reform Islam, or a more prominent imam? Who do you think is going to have more clout when it comes to the general public?
An imam couldn't convert. An imam, there are quite a few, I mean 3 or 4 imams who are saying, look, we're going the wrong way.
Yeah.
But they are easily shut up. They shut them up. Or they terrorize them or kill them. Look, it's very difficult. In Islam, there are 57 Muslim majority states. Not one of them is a functional state. Not one. Show me one. Not one of them has got the concept of democracy. By the way, when a Muslim speaks about democracy, the word democracy does not exist in the Arabic language. There is no equivalent word in the Arabic language in the last 1400 years denoting democracy. That's why the Arabs used the Latin version, demokratia. There is no Arabic word for democracy. The concept of democracy does not exist in Islam. Sharia is the dominant power. And Sharia is the nemesis of democracy. Sharia turns, look at the Muslims. I said there are 57 Muslim majority states in the world. 1.5 billion people. How many Nobel Prizes have they produced?
Yeah, very true.
In the last 100 years? 7. So, 20% of humanity, Muslims, have 0.2% of Nobel Prize winners. And 0.2% of humanity, Jews, have 20% of all Nobel Prize winners. Is it sinking in?
It certainly is. It certainly is. Now,
Yeah.
with these countries that, you know, how many Islamic countries did you say there were? 50?
57 Muslim majority states.
Okay. Now, how many of them, if I do something wrong and I have to go to court, am I ever going to go to a court which is the court of the land, like it is in the UK, or would the courts I go to, would they be religious courts?
Always religious court.
Wow.
You will be hanged. You will be quartered. You will be stoned to death. We are discussing people who are living in the 8th century of Muhammad's Arabia.
Yeah.
Until 15 years ago, Malaysia was considered to be a moderate, so-called moderate Muslim country. Malaysia now is Sharia. Indonesia is now Sharia. Everybody now is Sharia. That means they are retrogressing. They are not progressing. They are retrogressing. I always bring Israel for a simple reason. Because the contrast between the small nation and 57 Muslim majority state is so immense. It proves that Islam is bankrupt. It proves it. Because how is it possible that in 1.5 billion Muslims, you only have 7 or 6 Nobel Prize winners? And 15 million Jews have 20% or 176 Nobel Prize winners.
these Muslims who've won the Nobel Prize, do you know how religious they are? You know, are they just like Muslim because their parents are they were parents of Muslims, so they are Muslim?
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Three of the Nobel Prize winners were for peace. That piece of garbage, the girl from Afghanistan, and she is a piece of garbage. The one who survived the bullet, what's his name?
I'm not too sure.
I forgot. Doesn't matter. Yasser Arafat was another Nobel Prize.
Yes, Arafat was he? He did well on the whole peace process, didn't he?
Yeah. Only 4 people. 2 of them were Christians, not Muslim. Christian Arabs. By the way, the woman I was thinking of, the girl, Malala.
Okay.
Who still wears the hijab, which means she's so stupid. She still wears the hijab, the item which makes a woman inferior to man.
So hold on, just tell me a little bit more about this story. What happened to this lady?
It's a young girl. She was shot because she was in school. She was trying to learn. The Taliban shot her. But she survived. And they made her into a heroine. And she won the Nobel Prize, by the way.
And why are you critical of her?
She won the Nobel Prize. Because she's wearing the hijab.
Yeah.
The very item of submission to Islam, that she should not have worn the hijab anymore. They shot her because she was trying to educate herself. But she wears the hijab.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think you understand me. The hijab is an item from not from Sharia, an item that it was imposed upon the women of Islam by the men of Islam. I told you, it's not in the Quran. It is a subjugation item. But she's wearing it. So good luck to her, she's wearing it. Okay. But don't tell me that she is something to do with peace and Islam. Nothing to do with Islam. There's no peace in Islam. Islam and peace are a contradiction. Islam and justice is contradiction. Islam and love is. By the way, you won't find a single instance in the whole of the Quran, where is love between Allah and humanity, or love between man and man. In the whole of the Quran, love doesn't exist. Which is a contradiction, a complete contradiction from the Bible and from the New Testament, where love is important.
So what takes the place of love then in the Quran?
Hate, war, misogyny, racism, and torture. Yes. Somebody asked me in one of my interviews, a priest, and he's an American. He said, why is it that we priests are not winning in the prison system while the Muslim imams are winning? Well, the question shows how really ignorant the person who asked me. Now, let me ask you the question. I'm not saying even if you don't answer it, you're ignorant. But I want you to answer it. Why do you think the Muslim imams are winning in converting people in the prison system? Why do you think? Think about it.
I think, first of all, they've got a tracked audience. They've got a captured audience there, the people who are looking to convert people within jails. I think that's the first one. Second of all, it's fear and intimidation. There's a lot of kind of like gangland stuff within prison systems. So you need to affiliate yourself with a certain group in order to be harmed. I think that's another part as well. And then, yeah, I think those are the 2 key factors, really. I think it's a lot of fear and intimidation. I don't think too many people are going to be spiritually enlightened and want to join Islam. I think it's more through protection and fear for their own safety.
You are absolutely right about the 2, but you missed the most important one.
Uh-huh.
Quran is music to the ears of a criminal. Quran is music to the ears of a criminal. Because the Quran tells the criminal, when you become a Muslim, you are allowed to plunder, to rape, to the infidels.
Yes, it sounds good, doesn't it?
That is the only reason. Sorry, not the only reason. This is the primary reason.
Yeah.
But the other reasons that you say, okay, they are captive audience, and they want to belong to a group.
Mm-hmm.
But the most important single item is the Quran is music to every criminal mind.
We've got a real issue within England at the moment of people going in for violent crimes, something on those lines, and then coming out radical Islamic extremists. There's no segregation that goes on. So I'm sure you've heard of this gentleman, Anjem Choudary, yeah?
Anjem Choudary is the most honest Muslim in Europe.
Yeah.
You know, people, you've got to understand Islam. You've got to understand the psychology of a Muslim. Anjem Choudary tells you the truth. He tells the British people, we shall Islamize you. We shall raise the Islamic flag on the House of Parliament. He's telling you the truth. So what do they call him? Extremist. Disgusting. He's not disgusting. He's not extremist. He's a Muslim. And he's telling you the truth. When I talk to you, I want you to understand and absorb what I'm telling you. Anjem Choudary is an honest Muslim. Doesn't matter you're disgusting. Every Muslim is disgusting. Because every Muslim wants to be dead. He wants you dead unless you convert. He wants the humanity dead unless they convert. He's telling the truth.
Yeah. Certainly. I like that little statement you just said there, which is every Muslim wants to be dead. Why?
No. Only jihadi Muslims want to be dead.
Okay.
And the answer is with you. Why do you think they want to be dead?
They're closer to Allah if they fight for him, aren't they?
No, bull crap. They don't give a... Excuse me.
Go for it, mate.
Bad language. They don't give a damn about Allah. They are after the 72 virgins. You can laugh at this. But the people who laugh at them are the ones who are stupid. They believe. Muhammad said to them, when you die, you get the hurriyat. You get all the drinks that you want. You want milk, you can have milk. You want wine, which is prohibited in life, you have wine. You want boys, you can have boys. You want girls, you have girls. In the afterlife. Not on life in earth. That's why they want to die. They don't die because of Allah. That's bullshit. Why would they die because of Allah? They don't know who Allah is. They don't know what Allah is. They die because they honestly, truly believe what the Imam told them. Another question. How many Imams have you heard of who went on jihad? Name one.
No, I'm not. No, I can't.
Name one Imam who went on jihad.
No, I can't off the top of my head.
No, you can't. Imams don't go on jihad. Imams are too intelligent to go on jihad. They said somebody else who's stupid to go on jihad. Especially a young person. Imams don't go on jihad. Full stop.
Yeah, it's right, isn't it? Because that's what Anjem Choudhary's done, essentially. You can't really call him an imam, but for certain, he has a huge influence. And there was a massive high-profile case over in the UK with the Fusilier drummer Lee Rigby. You know, a soldier who got beheaded on our streets. And the person who did it was, it was a disciple, let's say, of, it's a bit of a strong word, but for sure, a follower of Anjem Choudary.
But then, there is no such thing as radicalized Muslim.
Yeah.
These are words used by the news media.
Yeah, I've got it. Yeah.
What is a radicalized Muslim? He's reading the Quran. What does that make him radicalized? If somebody studies Mein Kampf, what, it makes him a radicalized Nazi? He's a Nazi. What do you mean radicalized? You don't radicalize anybody.
Yeah, true. IQ, I might have...
Quran... No, sorry to interrupt you. The Quran is radical. You can't radicalize anybody. If somebody is reading in the Quran, kill the infidels, and you'll end up in Muhammad's whorehouse version of paradise if you get killed. He will do that. He's not radicalized. He's following the Quran.
Yeah, I suppose it's just my English sensibilities coming through there, and it's something I maybe have to try and be more proactive about stopping, because you're right. Throughout this, interview today, I've alluded to radical Islam, a little bit more of a, authoritarian, adaptation, And you're right. All these terms are rubbish, and it's something that I'm regurgitating because I'm part. I'm English. I've listened to all the media all this time, so I'm trying to carefully select my words to not be too inflammatory. But that's all rubbish, and I'm just being part of the problem by using these terms. It's just Muslims, isn't it? It's just Islam. There's no radical Islam. It's just Islam. So if anything I'm going to take away from today's lesson is to just be more careful with the words I use, really, or more accurate.
I don't want you to be careful. Wait a minute. Why do you have to be careful?
Yeah.
They're not careful. Muslims say to us, we shall kill you if you don't convert. They're not being careful. They're not being polite. Why are you going to be polite?
Yeah.
Something very important. Words are extremely powerful. And the use of words is even more powerful in the context that they are used. You must use your words very, very carefully. Not because you are afraid of anybody. To hell with everybody. Yeah. You use the word in the correct manner. There is no such thing as a radicalized Muslim. Full stop. No militant Muslim, moderate Muslim, radical. They don't exist. Only in the mind of the Western media. And they're corrupt. And they're clueless. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Yeah, what is jihad? Jihad is not a spiritual struggle to commune with God. Jihad is to destroy. Who said that? Muhammad. Chapter 2. Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 216. Muhammad, Quran says, jihad, holy fighting in Allah's cause is ordained for you Muslims, though you dislike it. And it may be that you dislike a thing which is good for you, and that you like a thing which is bad for you. Allah knows, but you do not know. So the ordinary Muslim doesn't know crap. Allah knows. Sahih Muslim Hadith 4631 and 4626. Abu Hurairah says, I heard Muhammad say, I love that I should be killed in Allah's cause, jihad. Then I should be brought back to life and be killed again in jihad. Sahih al-Bukhari 4.50. Anas bin Malik says, the Prophet said, a single endeavor of fighting in Allah's cause, qital fi sabilillah, jihad, is better than the world and whatever is in it. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, to be able to indoctrinate any human being, to be so prepared as to willingly die for a belief, thus becoming a shaheed, a martyr, who would be rewarded with eternal sexual, sensual, and carnal pleasures in the afterlife, in Muhammad's whorehouse version of paradise, then life on earth should be considered among the most diabolical weapons of war ever conceived. That's my statement.
It's a good statement at that. I really like that one. That's great. Now, I'm going to wrap this up soon, but I just want to get a couple of questions out there before saying thank you very much and goodbye. Now, one of them is alcohol within Islam. Now, there's certain texts within the Quran, or it might be in the Hadith, that promise you loads and loads, all the alcohol you want in the afterlife. But then, alcohol's haram. Muslims aren't permitted to drink it. So, how did that discrepancy come about?
What did I tell you? Muhammad, by the way, very important. Nowhere in the Quran is alcohol prohibited. Nowhere. It says it may be good for you, but it gives you more trouble than otherwise. It is prohibited by Umar ibn Khattab, especially in the Hadith. So in the Quran, it is not haram. But in the Hadith, it was made haram. But, as I said, Muhammad promised his followers that when they die, whatever is prohibited in life, they will get in the afterlife. So what does the Imam tell you? No. The khamr that they have in the afterlife is not intoxicating. Really? When you read the Quran and the Hadith, the word is exactly the same, khamr. The word is exactly the same, it's not changed. So how is it intoxicating on earth, not intoxicating in the afterlife? Again, it's called taqiyya. It's subterfuge. It's a lie. Next.
I like it. Come on, let's quick fire. But I'm actually going to ask you a question off the back of that one. There are different variants of taqiyya. There's not just that one term when it comes to deceit. No, there are a few others as well that have slight variants in definition.
Yes, okay, they have kitman, they have taqiyya. It's irrelevant. Taqiyya is the cover. Taqiyya, it means a Muslim can sit with a Christian, eat pork, can sit with a Christian and drink wine. Both prohibited. For as long as in his mind, what he's trying to do is to undermine the Christian so that Islam will take over. It's allowed. It's allowed. He is literally subverting the Christian in front of him. And this is what happens when the Pope, of all the people on earth, the Pope, the leader of 1.2 billion Catholics, tells his own flock that he couldn't find any aggressive verses in the Quran. I sent him an email, by the way. I did.
You sent the Pope an email. That's brilliant.
I did, honestly. I said, and I wasn't being polite, I said, any decent human being with two brain cells of logic, having read only 8 chapters, chapters 2 to chapter 9, would contradict you. So we have a leader who is misrepresenting deliberately, whether out of stupidity, ignorance, I don't give a damn what the reasons are. For him to say that he couldn't find aggressive verses in the Quran negates him as a leader, negates him as a human being. I don't care he's the Pope of the Catholics. That's irrelevant. He's lying.
And you can say that categorically. There's no way you can look into Islam and say there's no violent verses. That is just a barefaced lie.
What do you mean categorically? Islam categorically is a war machine.
Yeah.
It's a war machine. It's a roadmap to death and destruction. Has been for 1400 years. Yeah. You show me a case where Islam and Muslims conquered a country and made it great. Show me one.
Yeah, I don't think so. There was a photo being circulated on social media recently of a Muslim working at a checkout till in a supermarket in the UK, and he was refusing to serve the customers who had alcohol. If you had alcohol, go to another till. I will not do it. Now, these examples are becoming a little bit more prevalent within England and I suppose in Europe as well. So my question for you is Europe submitting to the Sharia?
If they allow it to continue, they finish Sharia. But they shouldn't. First of all, the piece of garbage, the guy who is serving, he is not drinking it. He is in England. If he doesn't like it, pack up, go back to your Pakistan or whatever country you came from. But for the British government to allow him to continue to be in England is a crime. The crime is not with the guy. The criminals are the justice system in Europe, who support Sharia more than Christianity.
Yeah. Great point.
They are the criminals. No, the Muslims is doing what he is supposed to do. He is trying to impose Sharia. He's succeeding. And the ones who are aiding and abetting him are the justice system.
IQ, let's finish on something positive. What would you say are some good bits of advice?
Advice is, first of all, that every single non-Muslim should Google Quran.
Yeah.
Don't buy it. Don't waste your money buying the Quran. It's a waste of money. Google Quran. There are 114 chapters. Don't waste your time. Read to chapter 9 only. You will know more about Islam than all the imams.
Sorry, IQ, you broke up just a little bit there. What chapters should we read?
2 to 9.
Okay.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 8 chapters. Yeah. You don't need any more than that.
After that, we'll be informed. Yeah, we'll know Islam.
Because I'm telling you not to read the whole 114 chapters. Only 8 chapters. But they are the deadly chapters of the Quran. 2 and 9 are the deadliest. Okay. So, you get enlightened. When you get enlightened, a piece of garbage of a so-called politically correct person, if he comes against you, you can wipe the floor with him. Knowledge, you know, in Christianity, there are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Do you know about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Islam has a 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You know what they're called?
Maybe. Go on.
Knowledge, 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 and knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. I end our conversation.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a great way for me to start my Sunday morning. I really enjoyed my time with you today.
I hope it will educate somebody. Fantastic. God bless. You take care.
You too, sir. Thank you. And yeah, I hope to speak to you soon. You're a font of knowledge.
No problem.
Top man.
Care.
IQ, have a good day. See you later.